I was never the impulsive type. I didn't rush into things. I read contracts twice, kept receipts, and backed up every file. But Ethan, he made me forget all that. He was warmth on a cold day, laughter that reached the back of my ribs. When we met at a university mixer, he told me I made this country feel like home. His accent was gentle, his eyes kind. He never pushed, never begged. He just showed up. Flowers when I was tired. Coffee when I didn't ask. He remembered the names of my coworkers, brought my mother chocolates. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. It felt fast, but he said, when you know, you know. I nodded, blinking back tears. Everyone whispered it was whirlwind, but I defended it. Love was allowed to move fast, if it felt right. After the wedding, things changed gradually. He started staying out late, claiming he was working double shifts. He wasn't as affectionate. Said he was tired. Then one day, I overheard him on the phone. Laughing. Arrogant. She'll never see it coming. Green card secured. My breath stopped. I stood in the hallway, invisible. And just like that, I wasn't his wife. I was his target. I didn't scream. Didn't walk into the room and demand answers. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling but my face calm. I replayed the sentence over and over in my head. Green card secured. I could still hear the way he laughed, low and cruel, like this was all a game. A project he'd completed. I didn't even know who he was talking to. Probably her. The woman he actually loved. The one who knew the truth. I thought back to every suspicious moment, every vague excuse, every time he was just tired or under pressure. I'd made space for him, explained it away, defended him. But now, I saw it for what it was, an act, and I, the fool. I closed my eyes, swallowed hard, and whispered, not yet. Not time to confront, not time to unravel. It was time to prepare. Ethan had built a story for immigration officers, for me, for the world. He crafted it carefully, but I'd always been better at details. I cleaned my tears, grabbed a notebook, started a timeline. Every text, every call, every shift in his tone. If he thought I'd go down quietly, he didn't know the woman he married at all. It started with receipts, literal ones, bank statements, hotel stays, Uber rides he never mentioned. I dug through drawers, opened his old laptop, checked our shared email, found folders he probably thought I'd never open. What I saw made my stomach turn. Hidden photos, a video call log with someone named Jay, flight inquiries. One message chilled me. 2 more months. I'll be out of here. Wait for me. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to replace me. And it was all so efficient. Like I was nothing more than paperwork. I could have broken something right then. But instead, I opened a private folder on my own desktop. Labeled it Insurance. Dragged every file in. Screenshot every message. Downloaded call logs. I remembered something he once said to me when we were dating. You're so organized. I could never get away with lying to you. I smiled bitterly at the screen. No, you really couldn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched him snore beside me, mouth half open, peaceful. I stared at the man who used my love to get his residency. And while he slept, I mapped the undoing of every single lie he'd ever told. Ethan began prepping for a family visit soon after. Said his mother missed him, that she needed him to help with her business abroad. I played along, smiled. Of course, baby. You've worked so hard. He kissed my forehead. I'll only be gone a few weeks. What he didn't know was that I'd already contacted an immigration attorney. Quietly, carefully, paid in cash. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Serena, asked only one question after I showed her the documents. Are you ready to blow up his entire future? I didn't blink. He blew mine up already. She nodded, explained how conditional permanent residency worked. That if I filed a complaint before the 2-year mark and proved fraud, his green card could be revoked. Permanently. He'd be flagged, banned from re-entry. It would be brutal, precise, and legal. My hands were cold as I signed the first affidavit. Not from guilt, but from release. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my friends. Not my sister. Because I knew they'd try to talk me out of it. They'd say, just leave. But they didn't know what it felt like to be used like a stepping stone. I wasn't just leaving. I was shutting the door behind him. The hardest part wasn't the evidence. It was pretending. Smiling at the dinner table. Asking him if he packed socks. Sitting beside him while he showed me tourist spots online. Pretending he actually planned to come back. He even had the audacity to say, next time, I'll take you with me. I laughed. Maybe you will. We watched a movie together that night. I don't remember the title. Just how close he sat. How easily he kissed my cheek. I wondered if it was real for even a second. If any part of him had loved me at all. But the more I replayed that phone call, the less it mattered. I wasn't here to question his conscience. I was here to take back mine. That weekend, I mailed a copy of our wedding license, our photos, and his audio confession to the USCIS tip line. I uploaded backups to a secure drive. I included everything Serena told me to. And when I sealed that envelope, I felt nothing. No triumph. No revenge. Just a stillness that tasted like power. The first real power I'd had in a long time. Ethan wanted a green card. He was about to get a red flag. Ethan started getting careless. His confidence grew with every passing day. He bragged to friends on speakerphone while cooking, assuming I couldn't hear. Only a few months left, and I'm in the clear, he said once, tossing onions into a pan. After that, I'm gone. She'll cry, sure, but she'll bounce back. They always do. I stood in the hallway, hidden, hand clenching the wall. Bounce back. He thought I'd be another naive woman too ashamed to expose him. Another notch in his visa scam. But I wasn't naive anymore. I was watching a house of lies start to creak under its own weight. I documented the date and time of every conversation. Not because I needed more proof, but because I wanted my case to be airtight. He went out the next night, wore cologne he never used around me. Said it was just drinks with coworkers. He came home at 2 a.m., humming, reeking of her. I laid awake, staring at the ceiling. Ethan thought he was months from freedom. He didn't know I was days away from snapping the last thread, holding up his illusion. And when it fell, it wouldn't make noise. It would be silent, sharp, and permanent. He applied for credit using my name. That was the final straw. I found the email buried under a Gmail promotions tab, an approval confirmation for a new card he'd opened using our joint information. But the mailing address? A P.O. box I'd never seen before. I stared at it for a long time, then closed the laptop. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Something in me had already calcified. Ethan was planning not just to leave, but to leave with something. My money, my record, my clean name. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a new affidavit with Serena. We added identity theft to the file. Fraud layered over fraud. I updated the USCIS complaint, included new screenshots, and sent it all registered. Ethan came home drunk that night. Told me I was looking tired lately. Asked if I was doing okay. I smiled. Told him I just needed rest. Big month ahead, I said, meaning it in ways he couldn't fathom. He kissed my cheek and said, Everything's going to work out, babe. And for once, he wasn't wrong. Everything was going to work out. Just not for him. In his final week before the trip, Ethan began packing. I watched him fold shirts I had bought him, tuck away gifts from me like they meant nothing. I noticed he left behind the framed wedding photo in our bedroom. Maybe he didn't plan to come back. Maybe he didn't think I'd notice. Either way, I didn't ask. I played my role to the end. I made his favorite meal. I helped him zip his suitcase. I even kissed him at the door. Safe travels, I said sweetly. He winked and whispered, "Next time, I'll take you with me." The audacity almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded, closed the door behind him. Then I called Serena and said, "It's time." Within hours, the fraud complaint escalated to an alert. The tip I filed went into formal review. His immigration record was flagged. I sent one last message to the private investigator. No more shadowing needed. He just walked himself into the storm. I poured myself a drink, played music, and waited, not with anger, not with hope, but with certainty, because I wasn't chasing justice. I was delivering it, and I would do so on my own terms, quietly and completely. 3 days passed. I returned to my routine, slept deeply for the first time in weeks, took long walks, reorganized the living room. I even watered the plant Ethan always forgot existed. It was strange how peace can feel almost unfamiliar when you've been surviving in chaos for too long. But I embraced it. Then the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. It was Ethan. Panicked. They pulled me at the airport. I'm in holding. They said there's a flag on my file. What did you do? He sounded like a child caught stealing. No bravado. No arrogance. Just fear. I didn't call back. I sent Serena the audio. She laughed. He's about to find out what due process really means. By the end of the week, his visa was formally revoked. I received an official letter stating the case had been closed and approved for full denial. I framed it, not for revenge, for remembrance, a trophy not of war, but of wisdom, because loving him wasn't my shame, but letting him get away with it would have been. The next message came through WhatsApp. Ethan had found a way to call using a foreign SIM. "Please," he wrote, "I messed up. I know. But don't do this. You don't understand what they'll do to me." I read the words over breakfast. Toast, tea, sunlight on the table, peace in my chest. He was right about one thing. I didn't understand what they'd do to him, because I had stopped caring. I didn't know him safety. I didn't know him shelter. I had offered love, paperwork, a home. He had offered lies in return. I took a screenshot, filed it with the rest. Then I blocked the number. I spent the rest of that day cleaning the apartment, not out of grief, but out of ritual. His shirts gone. His toiletries trashed. The framed wedding photo, I replaced it with a print that read, "I am not your stepping stone." I lit a candle that night and let the flame dance. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like rebirth. The ashes were his. The air, mine. And for the first time in our marriage, the silence wasn't empty. It was earned. And it sang the kind of freedom he'd never touch again. Friends started asking where Ethan was. Traveling, I'd say simply. No lies. Just enough truth. But even that stopped soon. I unfollowed him on everything. Changed my emergency contacts. Closed our joint accounts. I even changed the locks, not because he'd come back, but because I'd never again let anyone feel entitled to walk through my door without earning it. Serena offered to help me sue for financial damages, but I declined. "Let him pay in time," I said. "That's a currency I respect more." She nodded. "You're not like most people I work with. I smiled. That's what he thought too. One night, while journaling, I wrote the sentence, "He married me for papers." I married him thinking love was enough. And then I crossed it out, because love was enough on my end. And that wasn't a weakness. That was the one part of me he never got to corrupt. My ability to love honestly, deeply, and fully would never be his to soil. That was my inheritance. And he could choke on his own paperwork. Because I wasn't the woman he manipulated. I was the woman who filed the complaint. And then moved on without a sound. Word got back to me that Ethan had tried appealing the immigration ruling. That he claimed I framed him out of spite. That I was unstable. That I had mental health issues. I didn't flinch. I didn't rage. Because every lie he tried to weaponize was drowned out by one louder truth. His own voice. The audio. The documents. The messages. The timeline. His case was denied before it even started. He was removed from the country under permanent ineligibility for re-entry due to willful fraud. That phrase echoed in my mind. Willful fraud. Not just a mistake. Not just a bad choice. Intentional deceit. And I had caught it, proven it, and ended it. Clean. Legal. Final. A friend asked, "Do you feel vindicated?" I shook my head. I feel light. Because vindication implies I needed someone to believe me. I didn't. I just needed to believe myself again. And I did. Not because anyone validated my pain, but because I had the courage to stop asking for closure from the person who caused the wound. I closed the chapter myself. With receipts. With law. With spine. Ethan's story was over. Mine was finally beginning. The first time I laughed without guilt was at a rooftop brunch with my sister. She was the only one who knew everything. She raised a toast to starting over with your name clean. I added, and his record dirty. We laughed. I wasn't bitter. I was just free. We talked about travel, about starting my own business, about the kind of man who doesn't need a visa to commit. For the first time, I felt ready to love again. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. And not the version of love that comes dressed in urgency and sweet talk. Real love. Love that shows up when no one's watching. That doesn't need documents to feel real. That kind of love, I realized, starts with me. Loving myself enough to walk away from anything that asks me to shrink, to settle, to sign things I don't understand. Ethan had taught me how easily charm could turn into chains. But now, I wasn't bound by anyone's timeline. I was writing my own. Slow, precise, earned. And each page started with one phrase I would never again forget. I am not a stepping stone. I am the destination. It started with a blog post. I didn't name him, didn't include photos, just told the story. A woman falls in love, marries a man she believes in, finds out she was just a bridge, not a partner. I talked about the loneliness of realizing the vows were only real for one of us, about staying silent not out of fear, but out of strategy, about how sometimes justice isn't loud, it's measured. I called the post The Quiet Divorce. It wasn't about heartbreak. It was about recalibration. The response was instant. Emails, DMs, anonymous comments. You wrote my story. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for reminding me. I'm not crazy. That's when I realized I hadn't just burned a bridge. I'd lit a path. For women like me. For anyone who had ever been used, then gaslit, then left to carry the shame alone. I wasn't a cautionary tale. I was a mirror, and the reflection wasn't tragic. It was sharp, steady, and unbothered. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I had the one thing he'd never understand. My freedom, built from the rubble of his plan, and polished with every step I'd taken without him. A podcast reached out next. A women's rights organization had read the blog and wanted me to speak, anonymously if needed. But I said yes with my full name. No fear. No flinching. The episode aired under the title, The Visa Wife Who Fought Back. In it, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I spoke clearly about how he said, "You're everything I need to stay here." About how I once thought that meant love. About how silence is often seen as weakness. But in my case, it was how I built my case. I said, he married me for freedom. And in the end, I reclaimed mine by taking his. The host was quiet. Then she said, "I don't think he expected you to win." I nodded. That's the thing about people who rely on manipulation. They always forget who's really paying attention. The episode spread fast. I received a message from a lawyer saying she was using my story to train interns. From a social worker helping women exit fraudulent marriages. From a woman in New Jersey who said, "I was about to sign the paperwork, but you made me stop and ask better questions." And just like that, my pain had become prevention. My silence had become signal. And my story had become strategy. People kept asking if I felt done. Like the story had wrapped. Like I could finally move on. But I realized something. I had already moved on long before the final stamp, the final block, the final decision. Moving on isn't about the paperwork. It's not about the moment someone is punished. It's about reclaiming the version of yourself that never needed to be rescued. I wasn't waiting for Ethan to suffer. I was waiting for myself to breathe without checking the air for lies. And now, I could. I didn't search his name. I didn't check immigration updates. I didn't hope he saw my name in headlines. Because I wasn't writing this story for him. I was writing it for every woman who had ever been called crazy when she asked a simple question. For every person who ignored their gut because love asked them to. And for the girl I used to be, who thought trust was a guarantee, not a gift. That girl was gone. But I loved her still. Because she gave me the one thing Ethan never did. A real beginning. And this time, I was going to live it with both eyes open and my hands finally free. I moved apartments. Nothing dramatic. Just a clean place, good light, fewer memories. I chose it because of the windows. Wide and quiet. I could hear the wind in the mornings. And at night, I could fall asleep without waiting for a key to turn in the lock. I repainted the kitchen. Donated the towels with our initials on them. And when I moved the last box, I stood in the center of my new living room and said out loud, "This is mine. Not rented. Not borrowed. Not shared with a plan I never agreed to. Just mine." I took time before filling the shelves. Bought books slowly. Chose art like I was curating a museum of peace. I even started cooking again, not because anyone was watching, but because I wanted to nourish myself. I lit candles at night, not for romance, but to prove I could make fire and still feel safe. I didn't talk about Ethan anymore. Not because I forgot him, but because he no longer deserved a single sentence in the chapters one was writing. His exit wasn't the climax. It was the prologue. The story began when I chose myself, without apology. A publishing house reached out after hearing the podcast. They wanted me to write a book, not a memoir, but a guide. A soft roadmap for women who've been used, silenced, overlooked. I didn't say yes right away. I needed time. I didn't want to write a book about pain. I wanted to write a book about re-entry, about how to come back into your own life after being used as someone else's ladder. I drafted in the mornings, slow and deliberate. Chapter titles like "The Silence Was Strategy," "Receipts Are Self-Defense," and "Love Doesn't Need Documentation." I wrote for the women who signed things they didn't understand, For those who were left holding debt and disappointment. For those who still thought if they were just nicer, it might have worked. And most of all for the woman I used to be, who believed marriage was protection, who thought loyalty would be enough. When I turned in the final manuscript, I didn't cry. I just took a walk, listened to the wind, and whispered, "We did it." Not to Ethan, to me, because I had written the book I once needed someone to hand me, and now I was the one passing it forward. The book became a quiet success. Not flashy, not viral, but useful. Therapists recommended it. Legal groups ordered copies. Women left reviews that felt like letters. I feel seen. You saved me time and heartbreak. I finally left. I wasn't a celebrity. I wasn't trying to be. But I became something more enduring. A reference point. A reminder. A name women whispered to their friends when they said, "I think I'm being used." And that was enough. I didn't need to be famous. I just needed to be helpful. Sometimes I'd get invited to speak, and I'd decline. Other times, I'd show up quietly, no glam team, no fanfare. Just me, a woman who once almost lost herself to a lie, and now helped others recognize the same patterns before they burned. I spoke gently, not because I was weak, but because I didn't need to scream to be heard. They listened, because I had lived it, and they knew. The truth didn't need sound effects, just space. And that's what I gave them. Space to leave, space to grieve, space to grow. And it all began the night I said nothing and started collecting receipts instead. Years passed. I never saw Ethan again. But I heard whispers. He tried to enter another country, was flagged. Attempted another visa, denied. His name appeared on an internal watch list shared across 3 regions. Consequences he never thought would stick. I imagine he sits somewhere now, telling stories about the woman who ruined his life. Maybe he blames me. That's fine, because I'm not the one who built his life on lies. I was just the mirror that refused to stay fogged. I didn't need to defend my choices anymore. I didn't even need to remember them every day. They lived in the life I built afterward. My clean apartment, my unshakable credit, my ability to trust again, myself most of all. Sometimes I'd pass a couple on the street holding hands, whispering sweet promises, and I'd smile, not bitterly, just aware, because now I knew the difference between a vow and a visa, between charm and commitment, between someone who wanted to stay and someone who wanted a shortcut. Ethan had chased a shortcut, and I had built a legacy, one step at a time, one truth at a time, without rage, without apology, just a spine made of fire and a life built to last. On the anniversary of our wedding, I took myself out, just me, a good restaurant, a small glass of wine, and a dress I bought for no one's eyes but mine. I ordered dessert first, sat by the window, watched the world pass in pairs and groups and solitude. The waiter smiled. Celebrating something, he asked. "Yes," I said. "Freedom." He nodded, maybe confused, but I didn't explain. I didn't need to. That night wasn't about what I'd lost. It was about what I'd built. Joy that wasn't dependent on anyone's approval. Peace that couldn't be faked. And a heart that no longer waited to be chosen. Because I had chosen myself. When the bill came, I tipped well. Walked home in heels that didn't hurt. Took the long way, just because I could. And when I got home, I looked in the mirror, not for flaws, but for proof. Proof that I was still here. Still rising. Still mine. I ended the book with one sentence. He married me for a visa. Reborn, I canceled his status and kept my name. No metaphor. No twist. Just fact. Because sometimes the strongest revenge is no longer needing to rewrite what happened. just telling it plainly, just letting people read. And when they do, they don't just see his story. They see theirs. And more importantly, they see their way out. I turned off my phone, lit a candle, and whispered the final truth that ended the war inside me. I was never a bridge. I was the destination. And he never even made it halfway.